So if you, for whatever reason, have checked out my channel recently, you might have noticed a pretty long break between my past two videos. Now, this has happened before, but that time I was actually in the hospital, so, I think I had a pretty good reason for not being able to post. But, this time, I just kind of got hit with the lazy, and I also discovered a little game called Dead by Daylight. I had heard of the game and watched some videos on it in the past, and the game was even free on PS4 a couple of years back, but I had never actually played it. For whatever reason, I was always interested enough to watch videos on the game, but I was never interested enough to actually try it myself. But when one of my friends suggested I download it and play it with him, I thought, what's the worst that could happen? Oh. Shit. Well, might as well talk about it. According to Wikipedia and pretty much any other website that mentions it, Dead by Daylight is an asymmetric multiplayer horror game. Basically, each game contains 4 survivors working together in an attempt to escape alive, and 1 killer whose goal is to prevent survivors from leaving the trial. The main reason I think this game works as well as it does is the ease of play. It's not hard to grasp the basics of the game, which allows new players to begin and learn as they play more. We'll start by going over survivor gameplay. As a survivor, your main goal is to just complete 5 out of the 7 generators scattered across the map, and once at least 5 generators have been completed, it will power 2 exit gates, which after opening, contain your escape route. To repair a gen, you need simply to find one and hold down M1, or whatever button it's bound to if you're playing on console. Now, besides just holding a button, many actions in DBD will periodically give out skill checks. To pass a skill check, all you need to do is roll a d20 and add the accompanying ability modifier on the first page of your character sheets. Wait a minute, that's D&D. Joking aside, you'll receive a sound notification before a skill check goes off and you'll see this wheel appear. Simply press the skill check button when the cursor is anywhere in this bar and you pass. Getting a good skill check just kind of lets you continue working with no downsides, but if you manage to hit the smaller white bar in the skill check zone, you'll get a great skill check, which usually gives a small bonus to whatever you're doing. Missing skill checks results usually in a loss of progression towards what you're doing, and also can make a noise that can alert the killer to your location. Now let's talk about that killer guy, by the way. Besides doing gens, your main goal is going to be to try to avoid the killer or waste as much of their time as possible. When a killer begins a chase with you, your main goal is to avoid getting hit. The best way to do this is by getting as much distance as possible, or by putting some sort of obstacle between you and the killer. Most killers are faster than you by default, so strewn across the map are windows and pallets next to structures called loops. While sprinting, you can quickly hop over a window, which will usually put a nice barrier between you and the killer. Killers can also vault windows, but it takes them a few seconds to do so, and you can use that time to put more distance between you and them. Now, pallets, however, are your best means when it comes to chases. If you see a pallet leaning up against something, you can press the action button to drop it, possibly even on the killer, which will stun them for a few seconds. You can also vault over drop pallets, and unlike windows, most killers can't vault these, but they can destroy them, which will get rid of the pallet for the rest of the match. But until they break it, a dropped pallet can act as a pseudo wall that only you can get over. Unless you lose them, or you're a looping god, you're most likely going to get hit at some point. Getting hit by a basic attack will put you from the healthy state to the injured state. When injured, you do get a small speed boost to help you get away from the killer, but when you're injured, your next hit will immediately put you into the dying state. In the dying state, you fall to the ground and you have 2 options. Recover, which will start the process of healing. You can't pick yourself up fully normally, but more the bar that's full, the less a teammate is going to have to heal you before you can get up. Or you can also spend your time crawling, but it's fairly slow and you don't really get a lot of distance. But most of the time, the killer's probably just going to pick you up and place you on a hook. There is also the potential to wiggle out from the killer's grasp before being hooked, but this doesn't happen too often. Hooks are the other main part of the game. Each survivor can be hooked up to 3 times. The first time you get hooked, you start your hook timer. If it decreases halfway, you'll get put into second state instantly, but hopefully a teammate will come help you off before that happens. You can attempt to free yourself, but the base chance of that happening is only 4%, and it also makes your hook bar progress much faster, so I don't recommend it most of the time. When you reach second state, either from time or being hooked again, you're still alive, but you do need to struggle to remain staying alive before someone can get you. And if your bar runs out, or if you get hooked for a third time, your character dies instantly. Now, as I said, you can save people off the hook and also heal them, which will help, as the more people that stay alive, the more pressure you can exert on the killer. Now, when it comes to Survivor, that was a fairly basic explanation. There's a lot more that goes into it, but as I said, that's one of the positives of DBD. Easy to learn the basics, and then the more you play, the more things you're going to learn and kind of adapt with along the way. But the most important thing to remember as a survivor is teamwork. You can't get anywhere without the efforts of the team, and while not every teammate you run into is going to be as helpful as you probably would want them to be, you do kind of depend on them, so just keep that in mind. Now for Killer, the game switches to a first-person view. Your goal is to find survivors and start getting hits as soon as possible. While your main job is going to be trying to get hooks and sacrificing survivors, you do probably also want to keep an eye on those generators, as each one that gets completed is just one step towards the survivors escaping your grasp. You can also damage generators to halt their progress, and destroy some parts of the map like drop pallets and doors to make your chases easier. Now, for Killer, that kind of also about does it for the basics, but despite the simplicity in grasping how to play the game, mastering it, especially killer-wise, is a completely different story. Learning each map, figuring out how to identify each killer and what their unique power does, and how it's going to affect the match. And finally, perks. In this game, there's a currency known as blood points, received from matches or also completing challenges. You can use these blood points to level up your killers or survivors. Leveling up will grant you with more perk slots and also perks that you can fill them with. You can equip up to 4 different perks at a time, and there is a lot of them. This is kind of where that layer of complexity comes in. The sheer amount of perks and the different things they do is insane, and the process of explaining each one takes literal hours. But as you play and experiment yourself, you'll slowly catch on and be able to differentiate each one. As a survivor, you can also bring items or offerings to help aid you, and killers also have these things called add-ons which benefit them. Some of these can even drastically change how a killer works, which is just another aspect of the game that requires you to learn from exposure. Again, there is a lot that goes into a match once you start playing. Now when it comes to improvement, getting better at D&D is a hard thing to explain. Like, yeah, I could just tell you certain things that might help you, but the main way that you're going to improve is through experience. But in this game, winning or losing comes down to time. Pretty much anything you do in a trial takes time, and while there is no timer limiting how long a match can last, the longer a match takes, the less likely you are to survive. Repairing gens, healing and unhooking, and even just traversing the map all take time, and the less time you spend doing things like these, the longer the killer has to apply pressure and get kills. That's why when it comes to being chased, most of the time your goal isn't really to escape. Well, yes, escaping is great. For most chases, your main goal is to keep the killer busy for as long as possible, because as long as the killer is chasing you, your teammates have time to accomplish the previously mentioned tasks. Now for killers, your goal is probably going to be to get downs as fast as possible, or force the survivors to spend their precious time doing something that isn't a generator. This is where those previously mentioned perks and other items or add-ons come in for both sides. A lot of perks in this game work to try to shorten the amount of time it takes to do certain actions. For killers, this could be something like allowing them to break things faster or locate survivors so they can start chases faster. And on the survivor side, it could be stuff like doing gens or healing faster, or even just allowing you to traverse the map at a quicker rate. Now, I know what some of you might be asking. Yeah, the game might look kind of interesting, and it does have some really cool stuff like licensed killers that a lot of people might recognize, but what's the appeal? What keeps you playing despite already having put 300 hours in this game? Because, to be honest, this is really all the game has to offer. There is no alternate game modes or anything, so what keeps the drive going? Now, I can't say for sure for everyone in the community, but for me, I think it comes down to unpredictability. No game of DBD will ever play out the same way. Even if you're going up against, let's say, the same killer on the same map, even if you're using the same perks, the way everything pans out can be drastically different. And that's where a lot of the fun comes from. What kind of crazy shit is going to go down in this game? Sometimes you'll meet friendly killers who just want to pal around and let you do gens in their face. Sometimes you'll get survivors who are just utterly clueless and run right into you. Maybe you were even able to do like some sort of insane play and save someone in the last minute before they were sacrificed and barely make it out alive. Honestly, the games where everything goes right, well, fun, are often the games you tend to forget about, while the games where things went wrong, you can look back and laugh about. But unfortunately, there are going to be those games. Games where either maybe you just played really badly and made a lot of mistakes, or maybe you had a toxic killer or a teammate who just left you with a bad taste in your mouth. You're not always gonna have a good time in DBD. Sometimes you might hate it. I mean, if you go onto the subreddit or, God forbid, the Steam forums, you're gonna find just pages and pages of people complaining about this game. Some reasonable, some not so much, but at the end of the day, despite all our grievances with the game, there's also some sick part of us that keeps wanting more. And it's almost like some sort of disease where you end up wanting to infect more people. It is downright irresponsible to introduce some people to this game, because this is what can happen. Now, everyone plays games for different reasons, but if you're like me and you have a sort of completionist mindset, stay away. This game is a completionist's wet dream for all the wrong reasons. There's tons of achievements to go for, yeah, but the tome challenges are something else. Seeing this screen full of different challenges and slowly unlocking more as you complete them, rewarding you with blood points, it fills me with a sense of motivation that just keeps me wanting to come back and finish off those tomes. Even just the base game was tailor-made for a reward mentality. Watching that progress bar slowly fill as you work on a generator and then hearing that ping gets me every time. Getting pulled into this time sink of a game gets worse though, as you'll get to face a game with probably the biggest grind I've ever seen. Remember how I said earlier you use blood points to level up your characters and unlock more perks? Well, it takes a lot of blood points. Even if you're getting max BP every game, doing hella challenges, you're still gonna waste half your life on this shit. Again, I have over 300 hours, and I'm nowhere near close enough to finishing up any of my characters anytime soon. And with things like character prestiging and all the optional perks you may want to unlock, there's even more that I have to do. And with the game still receiving updates, there's just more stuff getting piled on. And yet, I keep coming back. So do I recommend this game? I'd say if it looks like you would enjoy it, you probably will. So knock yourself out. Just remember what happened to me though. And don't forget to make time for other things. If it doesn't seem like the game for you, that's kind of the exact same thing I thought for all those years. And I mean, hey, I ended up loving it. So, you know, if you're maybe able to try it out for free or you have a friend that's into it, maybe give it a chance. Either way, I'm Twin Dragos, and I promise I'll try to get more videos out soon. You know, after one more game. See you guys next time.